Hello, welcome to another edition of Mr. D reading Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. It looks like there's a little error. I'm actually not reading 113 through 119. It's going to be 119 through 125, but I'll make sure the name of the video is accurate. So, if you remember from our last reading, they went to go fight Malfoy at the Midnight Duel, and they ran into two unexpected guests, Filch and Peeves. "This is it," Ron moaned as they pushed helplessly at the door. "We're done for. This is the end." They could hear footsteps, Filch running as fast as he could towards Peeves' shouts. "Oh, move over," Hermione snarled. She grabbed Harry's wand, tapped the lock, and whispered, "Alohomora." The lock clicked and the door swung open. They piled through it, shut it quickly, and pressed their ears against it, listening. "Which way did they go, Peeves?" Filch was saying. "Quick, tell me." "Say please." "Don't mess with me, Peeves. Now where did they go?" "Shan't say nothing if you don't say please," said Peeves in his annoying sing-song voice. "All right, please." "Nothing! Ha ha! I told you I wouldn't say nothing if you didn't say please. Ha ha ha!" And they heard the sound of Peeves whooshing away and Filch cursing in rage. "He thinks this door is locked," Harry whispered. "I think we'll be okay. Get off, Neville." For Neville had been tugging on the sleeve of Harry's dressing gown for the last minute. "What?" Harry turned around and saw quite clearly what. For a moment, he was sure he'd walked into a nightmare. This was too much, on top of everything that had happened so far. They weren't in a room, as he had supposed. They were in a corridor. The forbidden corridor on the third floor. And now they knew why it was forbidden. They were looking straight into the eyes of a monstrous dog. A dog which filled the whole space between ceiling and floor. It had 3 heads, 3 pairs of rolling mad eyes, 3 noses, twitching and quivering in their direction, 3 drooling mouths, saliva hanging in slippery ropes down from its yellowish fangs. It was standing quite still, all 6 eyes staring at them, and Harry knew the only reason they weren't already dead was that their sudden appearance had taken it by surprise. But it was quickly getting over that. There was no mistaking what those thunderous growls meant. Harry groped for the doorknob. Between Filch and death, he'd take Filch. They fell backwards. Harry slammed the door shut and they ran. They almost flew back down the corridor. Filch must have hurried off to look for them somewhere else because they didn't see him anywhere. But they hardly cared. All they wanted to do was put as much space as possible between them and that monster. They didn't stop running until they reached the portrait of the fat lady on the 7th floor. "Where on earth have you all been?" she asked, looking at their dressing gowns hanging off their shoulders and their flushed, sweaty faces. "Never mind that. Pig snout, panted Harry, and the portrait swung forward. They scrambled into the common room and collapsed, trembling into armchairs. It took a while before any of them said anything. Neville, indeed, looked as if he'd never speak again. "What do they think they're doing, keeping a thing like that locked up in a school?" said Ron finally. "If any dog needs exercise, that one does." Hermione had got both her breath and her bad temper back again. "You don't use your eyes, any of you, do you?" she snapped. "Didn't you see what it was standing on?" "The floor," Harry suggested. "I wasn't looking at its feet. I was too busy with its heads." "No, not the floor. It was standing on a trap door. It's obviously guarding something." She stood up, glaring at them. "I hope you're pleased with yourselves. We could all have been killed, or worse, expelled. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to bed." Ron started after her, his mouth open. "No, we don't mind," he said. "You'd think we'd dragged her along, wouldn't you?" But Hermione had given Harry something else to think about as he climbed back into bed. The dog was guarding something. What had Hagrid said? Gringotts was the safest place in the world for something you wanted to hide, except perhaps Hogwarts. It looked as though Harry had found out where the grubby little package from Vault 713 was. Dun dun dun! Chapter 10, Halloween. In this chapter, Harry is going to get a broom, which is in my background, the Nimbus 2000, which you'll learn a little bit about what the broom is used for. Quidditch. Chapter 10, Halloween. Malfoy couldn't believe his eyes when he saw that Harry and Ron were still at Hogwarts the next day, looking tired but perfectly cheerful. Indeed, by next morning, Harry and Ron thought that meeting the three-headed dog had been an excellent adventure, and they were quite keen to have another one. In the meantime, Harry filled Ron in about the package that seemed to have been moved from Gringotts to Hogwarts, and they spent a lot of time wondering what could possibly need such heavy protection. It's either really valuable or really dangerous, said Ron. Or both, said Harry. But as all they knew for sure about the mysterious object was that it was about 2 inches long, they didn't have much chance of guessing what it was without further clues. Neither Neville or Hermione showed the slightest interest in what lay underneath the dog and the trapdoor. All Neville cared about was never going near that dog again. Hermione was now refusing to speak to Harry and Ron, but she was such a bossy know-it-all that they saw this as an added bonus. All they really wanted now was a way of getting back at Malfoy, and to their great delight, such a thing arrived with the post about a week later. As the owls flooded into the great hall as usual, everyone's attention was caught at once by a long, thin package carried by 6 large screech owls. Harry was just as interested as everyone else to see what was in this large parcel, and was amazed when the owl soared down and dropped it right in front of him, knocking his bacon to the floor. They had hardly fluttered out of the way when another owl dropped a letter on the top of the parcel. Harry ripped open the letter first, which was lucky because it said, "Do not open this parcel at the table. It contains your new Nimbus 2000, but I don't want everybody knowing you've got a broomstick or they'll all want one. Oliver Wood will meet you tonight at the Quidditch pitch at 7 o'clock for your first training session. Professor M. McGonagall." Harry had difficulty hiding his glee as he handed the note to read. "A Nimbus 2000?" Ron moaned enviously. "I've never even touched one." They left the hall quickly, wanting to unwrap the broomstick in private before their first lesson. But halfway across the entrance hall, they found the way upstairs barred by Crabbe and Goyle. Malfoy seized the package from Harry and felt it. "That's a broomstick," he said, throwing it back at Harry with a mixture of jealousy and spite on his face. "You'll be for it this time, Potter. First years aren't allowed them." Ron couldn't resist it. "It's not any old broomstick," he said. "It's a Nimbus 2000. What did you say you've got at home, Malfoy? A Comet 260? Ron grinned at Harry. "Comets look flashy, but they're not in the same league as the Nimbus." "What would you know about it, Weasley? You couldn't afford half the handle," Malfoy snapped back. "I suppose you and your brothers have to save up, twig by twig." Before Ron could answer, Professor Flitwick appeared at Malfoy's elbow. "Not arguing, I hope, boys," he squeaked. "Potter's been sent a broomstick, Professor," said Malfoy quickly. Yes, that's right," said Professor Flitwick, beaming at Harry. "Professor McGonagall told me all about the special circumstances, Potter. And what model is it?" "A Nimbus 2000, sir," said Harry, fighting not to laugh at the look of horror on Malfoy's face. And it's really thanks to Malfoy here that I've got it," he added. Harry and Ron had it headed upstairs, smothering their laughter at Malfoy's obvious rage and confusion. "Well, it's true," Harry chortled as they reached the top of the marble suitcase. "If he hadn't stolen Neville's Remembrall, I wouldn't be in the team." "So I suppose you think that's a reward for breaking rules," came an angry voice from just behind them. Hermione was stomping up the stairs, looking disapprovingly at the package in Harry's hand. "I thought you weren't speaking to us," said Harry. "Yes, don't stop now," said Ron. "It's doing us so much good." Hermione marched away with her nose in the air. Harry had a lot of trouble keeping his mind on his lessons that day. It kept wandering up to the dormitory where his new broomstick was lying under his bed, or straying off to the Quidditch pitch where he'd be learning to play that night. He bolted his dinner that evening without noticing what he was eating, and then rushed upstairs with Ron to unwrap the Nimbus 2000 at last. "Wow," Ron sighed as the broomstick rolled onto Harry's bedspread. Even Harry, who knew nothing about the different brooms, thought it looked wonderful. Sleek and shiny with a mahogany handle, it had a long tail of neat, straight twigs and Nimbus 2000 written in gold near the top. As 7 o'clock drew nearer, Harry left the castle and set off towards the Quidditch pitch in the dusk. He'd never been inside the stadium before. Hundreds of seats were raised in stands around the pitch so that the spectators were high enough to see what was going on. At either end of the pitch were 3 golden poles with hoops on the end. They reminded Harry of the little plastic sticks Muggle children blew bubbles through, except that they were 50 feet high. Too eager to fly again to wait for Wood, Harry mounted his broomstick and kicked off the ground. What a feeling! He swooped in and out of the goalposts and then sped up and down the pitch. And pitch is another word for field. That's what the British people use for field. So when it says pitch, it means field. The Nimbus 2000 turned wherever he wanted at his lightest touch. Hey, Potter, come down. Oliver Wood had arrived. He was carrying a large wooden crate under his arm. Harry landed next to him. Very nice, said Wood, his eyes glinting. I see what McGonagall meant. You really are a natural. I'm just going to teach you the rules this evening, and then you'll be joining the team practice 3 times a week. He opened the crate. Inside were 4 different-sized balls. Right, said Wood. Now, Quidditch is easy enough to understand, even if it's not the easiest to play. There are 7 players on each side. 3 of them are called chasers. 3 chasers, Harry repeated as Wood took out a bright red ball about the size of a football. This ball's called the quaffle, said Wood. The chasers throw the quaffle to each other and try to get it through one of the hoops to score a goal. 10 points every time the quaffle goes through one of the hoops. Follow me? The chasers throw the quaffle and put it through the hoops to score, Harry recited. So that's sort of like basketball on broomsticks with 6 hoops, isn't it? What's basketball? Said Wood curiously. Never mind, said Harry quickly. Now, there's another player on each side who's called the keeper. I'm keeper for Gryffindor. I have to fly around our hoops and stop the other team from scoring. 3 chasers, 1 keeper, said Harry, who was determined to remember it all. And they play with the quaffle. Okay, got that. So what are they for? He pointed at the 3 balls left inside the box. I'll show you now. Take this. He handed Harry a small club, a bit like a rounder's bat. I'm going to show you what the bludgers do, Wood said. These 2 are the bludgers. He showed Harry 2 identical balls, jet black and slightly smaller than the red quaffle. Harry noticed they seemed to be straining to escape the wood straps holding them inside the box. Stand back, Wood warned Harry. He bent down and freed one of the bludgers. At once, the black ball rose high in the air and then pelted straight at Harry's face. Harry swung at it with the bat to stop it from breaking his nose and sent it zigzagging away into the air. It zoomed around their heads and then shot at Wood, who dived on top of it and managed to pin it to the ground. See? Wood panted, forcing the struggling bludger back into the crate and strapping it down safely. The bludgers rocket around trying to knock players off their brooms. That's why you have 2 beaters on each team. The Weasley twins are ours. It's their job to protect their side from the bludgers and to try and knock them towards the other team. So you think you've got all that?